The second topic to highlight are the visual arts in the Renaissance. But before we can take a look at Renaissance visual arts, I think it is important to kind of go backward and really see what the people of the Middle Ages were painting and sculpting, what the medieval art was like. I want to highlight some characteristics of medieval sculpture. In looking at this piece, what we can see is that the figures have, some kind of background that they are connected to. And this is going to be very different from Renaissance sculpture, where we'll begin to see pieces that are freestanding, that you can actually walk around and see all sides of that sculpture. Another element I'm going to show you is sculpture like this. And what we want to pay attention to is that medieval sculpture was usually, when it had people in it, the people were very covered up. In Renaissance sculpture, we'll begin to see more nudes, more nakedness, but the medieval art, which was mostly religious art, was pretty holy and pure, and for that reason, people were covered up. I also want to draw your attention to this piece, which is pretty unrealistic. So another characteristic of medieval sculpture is being fairly unrealistic. In this piece, the gentleman sitting down is actually the same height as the gentleman standing up. And that's not realistic, but it's also not proportional. And so we'll begin to see again in the Renaissance a little more attention to proportion, perspective, realism, more appreciation of nudes and nakedness, and also more freestanding sculpture. In this section, I'm going to show you some medieval paintings, paying attention to the same characteristics. We have very religious themed paintings and unrealistic. We have a baby Jesus sitting on Mother Mary's lap, yet baby Jesus just has a face of an adult, not really a baby face. The halos also are supposed to show their religious significance, but in fact they may look just like flat plates attached to their heads. Here's another piece showing you, again, Mary and Jesus at the center of the piece. Each face in the background really is sort of a carbon copy of another. And of course, baby Jesus has that plate behind his head, that halo. There's no nudity. It's pretty unrealistic. It's very Christian, very religious art. And there's really no wonderfully done perspective or balance in this piece. This is another artistic piece from the Middle Ages, and this one as well. The first artist we're going to take a look at is the work of Michelangelo. Michelangelo's two pieces that we're going to pay attention to are the statue of David and the painting of the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican. The statue of David is a remarkable piece. It stands about 17 feet tall, and it was actually made of a single block of marble. The David portrayed here is supposed to represent the biblical David, who was a teenager and was able to defeat a giant named Goliath. While this is a religious themed piece, it's important to note that it has its Renaissance elements. David is not covered up, but he is in the nude. He looks human. He looks very realistic. It is a freestanding statue. If we zoom in here to his hand, you can see how very detailed Michelangelo was able to chisel away at this marble. The veins, the cuticles, areas around the finger, everything really is very attentive to detail. Yes, it looks realistic, and it is also religious themed. Another one of Michelangelo's accomplishments was the painting of the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. The Sistine Chapel is a chapel that is in Vatican City. The painting was commissioned by the Pope at the time, and it was a chapel that was reserved for papal ceremonies. Looking Looking inside of the chapel, and we're focusing on the ceiling, Michelangelo did have to deal with the architecture of the ceiling. It was not flat and had a lot of curvatures in which he had to work amidst. It took him approximately 4 years to complete the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, and he did have help. He had to build scaffolding around the inside of the chapel, and he had people help him paint elements that he would assign to them. He never quite told everybody what the completed picture was going to look like, and he constantly hired and fired artists in order to keep his vision for the ceiling secret. This is a close-up of the center part of the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, and it's the creation scene. On the right, we have depicted God, and on the left, you have the figure who is depicted as Adam and Eve as biblical characters. These biblical characters are actually humanized, and this may have also contributed to some controversy for the Pope once the painting was revealed to him. The question, of course, is, can you put a human face on God? Is that something that should be reserved to the mind's imagination? But yet again, you do see how amazing Michelangelo is able to depict a very detailed painting, very human-like, very realistic, and still maintain the beauty and integrity of the religion that needed to be depicted in order to be a focal point of a church. Another celebrated Renaissance artist is Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci not only was an artist, he was an inventor, painter, sculptor, architect, scientist, musician, mathematician, engineer, literary genius, specialist in anatomy and geology, astronomy, so many things. It really makes him a very well-rounded genius. The two pieces we're going to take a look at today are the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper. Here we see Leonardo da Vinci's masterpiece called the Mona Lisa. And for a variety of reasons, the Mona Lisa has captured our fascination. We don't exactly know who she is. We don't know who commissioned her or why she was painted. We often wonder, is she smiling or is she smirking? What we do know is that the artistic techniques that Leonardo da Vinci incorporates make Mona Lisa appear extremely realistic. He uses a technique called sfumato, which is a painting technique to soften the transitions between colors. You can see that around her eyes, under her chin, and even by her neck where her hair lies, giving us a gauzy veil-like appearance. Mona Lisa has often been recreated by other artists. We can see the final piece we're going to take a look at is Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper. This is a religious-themed piece. It is depicting the last meal that Jesus shared with his apostles in Jerusalem before his crucifixion. Again, if we pay attention to the artistic technique of this piece, we can see sharp angles of the walls that show perspective. And by that, we're looking at how pretty accurate it seems things appear close to us and things appear far away from us. So the ability to show distance and perspective is really highlighted here. We can also see in the background the windows and the light that comes through, showing us the world outside. This is a large mural and it's painted directly on dry plaster, which was probably a mistake because it contributed to its quicker decay and crumbling, and so it's had to be touched up and fixed throughout the years.